Hello and welcome to Misaal. My name is Zahed and I'm your host. On this podcast, I talk candidly with the most innovative minds working towards building a better startup economy in Pakistan. In this episode of the Misaal podcast, I invite you to listen in on my conversation with Omar Shah. He's a co founder and CEO of COLABS, a Lahore-based co working startup that enables startups, entrepreneurs, and freelancers to build and grow their businesses. Our conversation covers a broad range of topics, such as COLAB's recent seed funding of $3 million from top tier VCs, productizing essential backend services to startups, and providing customized solutions to a growing segment of enterprise customers. We also discuss hiring, funding environment, and exit opportunities for startups. Let's listen in. Welcome, Omer, to the Misal podcast. How are you?
Very well, Zahid. How are you?
I am doing well. So, are you joining from CoLab's location or are you working from home?
No, I'm joining from CoLabs. I sit in the marketing room, so I share a desk
Okay.
along with a lot of other people here.
Well, first of all, let me just congratulate you on raising your seed round,
Thank you.
$3 million from like the three of the best VCs in the game.
Yeah,
So, just tell me more about the deal.
we started CoLabs back in June 19, right?
Yeah.
And one thing that we were very cognizant about was that we didn't want to have very high cash burn. So we had bootstrapped the company for the first 2.5 years, and basically everything was self-funded. We had some angel investors, like very small checks. Otherwise, I myself had invested quite a lot into the company as a founder. I think it was back in September or October, right after Fatma, who is my chief operating officer, who joined us from Keep Trucking, said that, Umar, why don't you raise? And I said that, I mean, we're not burning cash. We're growing as we grow as well.
Yeah.
And I don't think we need to. And I think
Mm.
that's when also people like Faisal Aftab and Faisal Chaudhry from Zen, they said, but guys, you've really created something so special inside sort of Pakistan that it's not just a place for startups, but anyone walking into the space, they get to meet people, they get to network. Startups are meeting investors through you. You're doing so much over here, and you're doing all the back office support as well. So the idea was, they said that you should really look to do a round. I think I think Pharma joined us maybe September.
Mhm.
October, November, I realized that I stepped back from the day to day operations, which is everything that goes on inside the spaces, and actually started focusing on sort of growth strategy, started putting together a deck. And so my background also is venture and private equity. Spent seven, eight
Okay.
years doing that in global markets. So I started connecting to a lot of the people abroad and seeing, okay, fine, this is something that, because I mean, there's a lot of negativity around WeWork, and now there's
Yes.
the Apple TV show on it. We crashed,
I
and
was just,
everyone.
funny you mention it. I was just watching it like a couple hours ago. I was just watching the first episode.
Yeah, so exactly. I think the idea was that we would be very cognizant about the fact that you want to burn cash. And I think we opened around was mid-December, right? And
Mm.
mid-December is not a great time to open the round because people are going on holiday, they're coming back, whatnot. I think
Yeah.
by the second week of January, we had got so much interest because a lot of I understand that Collabs is not your typical SaaS. It's a traditional sort of brick and mortar business, but I think
Yeah.
because we really built something that is really special, and the idea was that we want to scale it up all across the country. I think that's when we managed to bring in everyone. And I mean, I remember I had a call with Atif on Thursday, and what was great was he said that what you've built is just super interesting because it's there to support the ecosystem. And just coming into collabs, you get that
Yeah.
energy and the vibe of wanting to sort of, I mean, work or connect, and also sort of the back office support we're trying to do. So I think
Yeah.
what was very key was that having the three main sort of gatekeepers, or the three main players, come in together, which hasn't happened before, I think was there. And I think that's where we sort of built down the ethos on, okay, we want to build these spaces all across the country. We want sort of collabs to be Karachi, Lahore, Islamabad, open another 10,000 seats in the next sort of 2 years, and then the next 5 years open these spaces all into tier two cities and other markets, and then going into sort of the back office solution, which is your payroll processing, your, I mean, compliance, setting up a company, bookkeeping, tax, and also sort
Yeah.
of trying to build and that we are still building those products today. We are looking to sort of understand what is it that people will want to sort of bring in, and how what the ethos is. So I think it was very key was that it was very interesting, and I mean interesting to me as well, because I mean I used to work in private equity, and private equity is very diligence oriented, 5 year performance, positive cash
Mhm.
flows, what the company is doing. Venture obviously is more around your TAM, the team, and what the
Yeah.
opportunity is. And I mean, less so in that. So it's super exciting. And I think we're super pumped. We want to open Islamabad and Karachi in the next 6 months. And
Okay.
we're really expanding the team. We built a great team
Okay.
here. And I think the reason for announcing the round, because I think people had known that we had raised. And I even
Yeah.
told some of them, I said, maybe I should just put out. I was talking to Zubair. So Zubair
Okay.
Paracha is one of our advisors.
Yes.
I
Yes.
said that maybe I
Yeah.
should just do a LinkedIn post and then people, hey
Uh-huh.
guys, we've raised, okay.
Uh-huh.
And he said, but
Uh-huh.
what आपने लोगों को, I mean, you want to get good talent, you want to create the hype and all that. So I said, fine. And it was great that we got TechCrunch and we got quite a few other people covering it. So yeah, it was exciting.
Yeah, yeah, that's excellent. Yeah, I mean, it's important. It's important to announce it, and I think Zubair is, of course, the best in the game. He's no longer doing those things,
Yeah.
but he's still the best. He's a legend. So, okay, so you mentioned the team. Like, how many people are we talking about? That how many people are currently working with
Our,
Collabs?
our team today is 100 plus,
Okay,
but it also includes operations, which includes your sort of blue collar workers. So if you take just the management team, we're about 45 to 40, about 50 people, which is
okay,
quite a lot of people for just, I
yeah,
mean, co working spaces, managing offices. But I think the idea is that we've really built functions like strategy, finance, technology. Now we're actually building out a product team.
okay,
And also we have a whole events and ecosystem partnership team. So
yeah,
their focus is
nice.
basically around engaging with the startups that's inside our spaces, engaging with
Uh-huh.
all the communities that exist today, either in Pakistan or outside of Pakistan, and trying to sort of come up with sort of programs and activities to engage and sort of have them interact with each other.
Yeah, yeah, yeah. So, I mean, co-working spaces, like there are multiple other, of course, you have competitors doing the same thing too. So, like, I guess what differentiates you from what I've read is like, you're providing the back end support and everything. So, was this something that you always wanted to do, or was this something that you thought about once you started talking to startups?
I think so. I step back a moment and tell you about why we open collabs, and I mean just my
Okay.
journey around as well. So when I moved
Yeah.
back to Pakistan, I used to come to Pakistan. I mean, I'm from Lahore. I grew up here, went to school there. I moved
Yeah.
abroad in 2007. Went to my university, and I was in London. I was in Dubai,
Yeah.
then I was in Mexico, Turkey, back in Dubai, and London.
Okay.
I think when I moved back, तब I think 25th move back करने से पहले I remember coming to Pakistan as an investor, right? At the time, regards to entrepreneurship, there was Dr. Omar Shah in the
Yeah.
PITB. There was the Plan
Yeah.
9s, जहाँ से Book Me
Yeah.
आया, Putari आया, ये Mango
Yeah. Yeah.
Bars, ऐसी companies,
Yes. Yeah.
Plan 9s
Right.
के
Right.
बाद NICs अभी बन रहे थे, बने नहीं थे, right?
Right.
As the NICs were being built, right, you saw sort of the Nest
Mm.
IO come up, NICs as well.
Yeah.
One thing was that most of the incubation centers were basically based around grant models. There was a 5 year
Yeah.
grant, and because it was a grant, there was not sort of focus or push to grow exponentially. And
Yeah.
I mean, it became more sort of government based organizations or
Yeah.
organizations that are backed by universities more around that. And then I realized that okay, fine. I mean, I want to be involved in startups, but I still want to
Mhm.
build a business that has a North Star metric, that is revenue, or sort of
Yeah.
a single metric which you can grow exponentially, and you can have that 3-4x growth each year. So I think
Yeah.
the idea was that I saw a big opportunity where co-working spaces existed in the market, but
Mhm.
they were just sort of floor seats, bean bags, PlayStation, very sort of casual based sort of spaces. And I think the idea was that we wanted to create these large centers where you have the core product, which is great, which is
Yeah.
your private offices and co-working, which provides you great sort of, I mean, committed rental revenues, which are sort of committed on the back of deposits and advances. But then I
Yeah.
think the point was that you want to provide the startups the ecosystem support, which
Yeah.
is what we do today through our workshops and trainings, and then the back office. So the back office is
Mhm.
something that if you go to markets like Saudi, or you go to markets
Mhm.
like Beirut, or you go to markets like other Asian markets, I mean, you go to a co-working space, they'll help you get your visa, set up your
Mhm.
company, do all of that. And I remember I met the Swivel team in back in 2019, and they said that it took us 12 days to set up in Nairobi, took us 92 days to open operations in Pakistan, right? So I was like, okay, why? Because then I realized, Ketchup, they either have to go through the government, they come to the
Yeah.
NIC. So I said that if we can act as that one facilitator who can
Hmm.
help from the whole, and I mean, we still have not figured out what we want to focus on. Is it just the back office? Is it the payroll? Is it like what Deal is doing in the US,
Yeah.
where they're hiring
Yeah.
remote workers and doing the contract? So that's what
Deal is
we're
actually expanding in Pakistan too
exactly, yeah.
rapidly. Yeah.
Talal
Yeah.
has joined there, I know.
Yeah. Yeah.
So the idea is that we want to see कि क्या है, and I think um, it was in Startup Grind. We got one of our first clients, which was, I mean, a US health EMS company. That two brothers, they came to us and they said that, okay, we have a PM and we're sitting in an office, but we want to come into collabs, but we want you to manage our payroll and we want you to
Okay.
process it and we want you to do the back office. So, I
Okay.
mean, that's what we did as a beta, did really well
Okay.
because I mean,
Okay.
right now, because in processing payroll is what? Okay, you need to do the local tax compliant, set up all the employees, give them contracts, and then process it once a month, make sure it's done in a second, right? So the idea is
Yeah.
that we were already doing it and we already do it today. We do it
Hmm.
manually today, but the idea is that we want basically are building for that, where we actually are building a product on the back of that. And the idea is that, I mean, we want to be that gateway into Pakistan. So if you are
Yeah.
someone who wants to enter, or you are a startup looking to
Hmm.
start off, Colab should not just be giving you a space, but Colab should actually be helping you, I mean, network, help you find your first client, help you do a
Hmm.
product market fit, or I mean, help you sort of engage with what's going on in the community. And I think NICs are great for building out the early stage, but if you look at 98% of the funded startups in the last 12 months, they have not, none of them have come out of the NICs. They are
Yeah.
founders
Yeah.
like myself who have moved back and they don't want to start off with their own office. Plus, a new
Yeah.
business starting off does not want to spend money on buying an air conditioner, buying furniture,
Yeah.
doing all of that. Plus, also
Yeah.
with all the work-life balance and remote work becoming so big post-COVID, I think the world is changing towards the fact that people really want to move towards sort of flexible spaces and want to be in spaces where they can actually meet new people. Like today, we have six fintechs that's it here. Just on the
Hmm.
back of those six fintechs, anyone looking to start a fintech was like, "Oh, we want to start at Colas because maybe we can interact with those founders, we can understand
Yeah.
those teams, what they do," and
Yeah.
that's basically, I think, the essence.
So, I mean, when you say like you will be expanding to like Islamabad and Karachi and all those locations, so when you go into a new market, what do you do? Do you hire someone on the ground who takes the lead? And do you purchase? I don't think you purchase buildings. You probably sign up leases, right?
Yeah.
So you do leases, long-term leases, and then you basically renovate the place the way you want to make it look like. So do you like hire based on the city, or do you just you yourself take the lead and like go and launch a city?
So right now, I mean, we're just in Lahore, so we have three
Mhm.
locations there today. We have about 1,200 seats. Our third location is actually going live next month, and we've already
Okay.
sold out half of that location. I think
Yeah.
with new markets, so it's very key is that we're trying to hire today. Two key hires that we're
Mhm.
trying to bring on is a GM South, which is someone who is based out of Karachi and knows the
Mhm.
ecosystem. He doesn't need to
Okay.
have real estate or construction experience because we've developed a playbook like a
Okay.
hotel, so we know exactly कि collabs को design कैसे करना है, बनाना कैसे है,
Yeah.
क्या करना है, and also on top of that events and everything else that we do, which is the thing on top. But I think the idea is it's trying to hire people and then giving them the lead. So like today we're interviewing for both Islamabad and Karachi, and the idea is to bring on people that we think understand the market, have a great sort of contacts and great people on the ground, and then have them sort of replicate what we've done in other sort of spaces in those markets.
Is there something that you look for when hiring? Because when the way you're growing, like you will be interacting with a lot of people, and uh, is there something that you really look for in someone when making a hiring decision?
There's one thing. So our
Yeah.
collabs, I mean, anything else, I mean, they're autonomous teams, they operate themselves. But I always do a final interview of anyone down from an intern to maybe a head of
Okay.
department, and that's the culture
Okay.
fit, right? I
Okay.
think the
Yeah.
reason being is that being in a high growth startup, and I mean previous years, but when I've worked in sort of venture, what's very very key is having those people that have the drive, the motivation, the grit. With regards to sort of hiring and what we're doing, obviously there are multiple positions open today, and in the next few weeks we'll be looking to sort of in the next 12 months we look to double our team, right? Or maybe
Yeah.
3x. I think the idea is that people who have the drive, the motivation, the grit. Even if
Okay.
someone has a degree in finance or they have a degree in history or politics, I feel that if they have in today's world, if you have the motivation or the sort of grit to sort of go and sort of perform, that's sort of very key. So I think it's very, very important to look at is culture and seeing that are they motivated enough to do this? Because working in a startup is not a typical 9 to 5, right? It
Yeah.
does not involve one JD. A JD can move 17 times in
Yeah.
a startup. Like, I mean, the people here who join us to do one thing and they end up doing totally something different, and then they move from team to team. So I think that's very
Yeah.
key to have is having an open mind and having,
Mhm.
and also believing that, okay, we're going to become the next unicorn. We're going to
Yeah.
be opening all across the country. We want to become that national brand where any
Yeah.
entrepreneur, when they start off, they understand, "Kacha ji, humne collab jana hai." So that's something
Right.
that's key.
How do you feel about hiring right now? Because I've heard like it's really difficult to hire good talent. There is a lot of issues with like you are. I mean, people are having hard time. Startups are having hard time keeping employees also once they hire them because people might just leave because they got a better offer from a different startups. And since money is no issue, a lot of these startups are raising money, and so money is no issue, right? So how is that working out for you?
Yeah, so I think for us, one key reason for announcing the
Yeah.
raise and doing the round as
Yeah.
well was hiring. Because
Okay.
previously you could bring on good talent and you didn't have much competition. But today, with the
Yeah.
amount of capital coming into startups, it's like a frenzy. It's no longer sort of a fair market in regards to sort of bringing in talent. I mean, today, the best talent chooses which company they want to go to. It's not about there's a lack
Yeah.
of jobs, it's the other way around.
Yeah.
I think with regards to hiring, that's something that today, because I give you an example. We announced our round on
Mm.
Friday. Today's Monday.
Mhm.
I
Mhm.
put a note out on LinkedIn. I've got 65 CVs in the last 3 days,
Yes.
direct
Yeah.
emails to me. Just, I mean, just an example, because I think the main output of announcing the raise also, when you become a venture backed company, people do want to come work for you because they feel that, okay, maybe we'll be part of a bigger journey, maybe we'll be the next Kareem and whatnot. So that's there. And I think what's
Mm.
very key is ESOP. So I mean, we've now, I mean, as part of the round, we've put in a very good ESOP, and we want to sort of
Okay.
put out a policy where you sort of lock in those employees. And I think that is something that helps you sort of retain. And that's where someone, if
Okay.
someone is earning, let's say, I don't know, 100,000, and they get offered 150, if they have an ESOP, the idea to retain them or to retain that retention is much easier as opposed to sort of just sort of paying on top. So that's something that we're trying to build in, and very key with regard to what we're doing today.
Okay. So about the ESOP, what is it like? Like, is it still? I mean, I'm used to hearing 4 years. Is that the case in Pakistan too?
Yeah, I mean,
4 years vesting.
I
Yeah.
think ESOP is standard. I mean, 4 years
Yeah.
vesting. We have a standard cliff, 1 year, and I
Okay.
mean, some companies are doing 3 years. Some companies
Mhm.
actually do a 4 year ESOP, and they feel that post the second year, employees are uninterested. So then they give them something called a box car that I recently heard, and then they give them sort of a 1 year extension where they get granted additional shares in year three and year
Okay.
four. So they end up staying 5, 6 years.
Yeah, I mean that's great. That's why people work at startups. So I work for a startup too, so I have some idea about that. My startup that I work for, we are based in Palo Alto, but we have a San Francisco office. That San Francisco office is actually a WeWork
Okay.
location. So WeWork basically we signed up a lease with WeWork, and then we made them do certain things with the location to make sure it has our branding and everything.
Yeah.
Is that something Collabs is also doing, or is it mostly right now it's just like just bringing in other startups or smaller startups without having to like restructure the floors or the floor plan?
We started off just, I mean, standard offices, 4, 6, 8, 12, 15. But in the last
Yeah.
2 years, I mean, 30% of our clientele today are enterprise clients. So our third
Okay.
facility, which has about a 500-person location, facility which was opening next month, half of that facility are large offices. So, I mean, we have
Okay.
large startups where we do everything from their branding, their designing, standard meeting
Okay.
rooms, conference rooms. We signed
Okay.
up Rocket Internet in March 2021, and Rocket
Okay.
Internet's a company called Genie, which is a ride-hailing business in Jordan and Saudi. They wanted a custom floor. So everything from their own meeting rooms, the CTO office, even like a designated area where they have PlayStation and games. We did the whole floor design per the specs. And I think
Okay.
today, as we grow as well, I mean, we've realized that the customer journey at Collabs is typically startups takes like maybe they start with 2 or 4 desks, then they take a small office and take a medium. I think post 20 people, it's all customized solutions. So today, I would say that
Okay.
30% of our clients are customized solutions. I mean, in this new facility, 50% of them are larger offices, which are 50, 75, 100-person offices where clients have fully customized floors.
Okay, 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 that's great. Okay, so now let's come to startups. Since you mentioned, like, back in the day, Patari and Plan 9 and all those things. So
Yeah.
I guess you are like best suited to ask this question. What do you see that's changed since that time? Now, what are the issues before compared to what are the issues startups are facing right now?
So with Patari, I'm actually an investor in Patari. I sit on the
Right.
board
Yeah.
of Patari
Yeah.
as well. I think the biggest difference is that back in 2016, 17, 18, there was very little access to capital. There was
Right.
just Samayakar and Fatma Ventures, right, at the
Right.
time. And they were great founders, they were great companies, but for them to scale, there was difficulties because I think सबसे पहले talent be limited tha, because people were not
Mhm.
moving back. Today, you see
Mhm.
people from Ivy Leagues applying for
Mhm.
startups in Pakistan because they feel that,
Yeah.
okay, we want to be part of a bigger journey. And
Yeah.
I think the other part is that I think at the time people were not ready for Pakistan, or they just thought that it was still all those optics around sort of, I mean, not a safe place. I mean, I'm corruption and X and Y and Z. And I remember, I mean, in 2014, we had a Pakistan fund through the company I used to work at, Abraj Capital, right? The
Yeah.
only investors in the fund were your USAID, IFC, CDC, FMO, not your typical investors, right? In the last, I think, 3 years, and especially in the last 24 months, you have companies like
Mhm.
Tiger coming into the country, like Kleiner Perkins investing, and more startups really sort of, not startups, more US or European based VCs and investors coming into the market. So today, actually, it's the opposite. There's an huge amount of capital available, and their good
Mhm.
quality deals are limited. That's why
Mhm.
today, I mean, it's a founder's market as opposed to investors market. And today, if you have a
Okay.
great idea, you are a strong founder, you have a good sort of team, it is not hard for you to raise capital. And that is what advice I give to startups today and to founders as well, that aaj ke zamane mein it's very, very easy to sort of raise and to sort of answer and manage. And I think that is the main differentiating factor, is that Pakistan today has become much more. Just in the last 4 days, I mean, I give you one example. I mean, I think I've hosted maybe 6 different types of investors from different countries, from like
Okay.
Malaysia to London, from India to like,
Mhm.
I mean Europe to Brazil, and they've just
Okay.
all I think they were all supposed to be coming to Future Fest, which is supposed to be happening
Okay.
last weekend, but a lot of them still ended up making the trip. And
Okay.
Today, I think everyone and anyone talks about Pakistan. I mean, because I worked in emerging markets for about 6 years. A lot of my colleagues are based out of Singapore, Mexico, London, Vietnam, Turkey, Africa.
Mhm.
I get calls in the last 6 months every single day. I mean, every at least once a week, saying that, okay, this is we're looking at this in Pakistan, looking at this in Pakistan, we're looking at X and Y and Z, and these are, I mean, investors that have never looked at Pakistan before. So I mean, I
Okay.
think today Pakistan is very, very ripe. So anyone wanting to solve for a problem that people have been able to
Mhm.
solve for in the West, in Europe,
Mhm.
you look at Indonesia or Egypt and India, are
Mhm.
obviously much bigger market. But I mean, if you have a solid team, you can do it.
Where do you think the ecosystem is going? Like when you have so much capital coming in, like I mean, I'm sure the investors can be patient for 5, 6 years, and then eventually they would want to look at, how the exit opportunities, right?
In any market, like if you look at Indonesia or you look at Egypt 5 years ago, even if you look at the Middle East, um, the first few years is when people are sort of coming in, they're investing. They will be companies that crash. There will be companies that grow exponentially, right? So I think that in around 2023, 2024, these 2 years, you will see really these companies like today, Pakistan has maybe a handful of companies that you can count on both your hands that have done maybe a Series B or Series C.
Yeah,
I don't think there are more than
yeah,
10 companies that have done a Series B or C. I
yeah.
think by 2015, 16, once people are doing sort of Series E's or D's, is when before that either they get acquired or you see actual exits sort of happening in the country. You already see accu hires happening. I think there's Abwab, which is the Jordanian.
Yes, yeah,
And then I
yeah.
think recently Jugnu also has an investor that's come in from Saudi, right? I think the Jugnu round that was done a few days ago.
Yes,
So
yeah,
you
yeah,
see, and I think there's also a trucking startup. I forget the name. I'm not sure if it's
yeah.
Truck It In, one of these that was sort of done. So you already see that happening today, but not to that level because they are mostly being acqui-hired. But I think today what you will see happening in the next few years is that you will see the first few exits that take place. And I think for companies that are based out of the US, based out of Europe, that have the amount of excess cash, they will, instead of looking to start in a market like Pakistan, like I remember when Amazon had put in a bid for Souk in the Middle East, right? Souk was the best company there by far. And initially, Souk was looking to get sort of acquired, or there's another a few, or it was actually raising a round, right? But I think once they were raising the round, it was like a few $100 million round back in 2017, 18. I remember seeing the presentation sent by Goldman Sachs because they were the sell side advisor on Souk. And I think the word in the market was that Jeff Bezos has come to the Middle East and he wants to acquire it. And eventually, they did end up acquiring Souk for I think it was 700 to 800 million dollars. I mean, something close to a billion. But the main reason was because Amazon thought that okay, if we start from scratch, it will take us 1, 2, 3 years, and we will have to invest a lot. This company has already built something which might not
Mm.
be the next sort of might not be the Amazon equivalent, but we can spend the next 12 months or 18 months changing it and actually acquiring it. And that is what you see in a lot of markets like Turkey and Egypt, Indonesia as well. So I think that in Pakistan today, that is something that we will see happening shortly.
Yeah. So I mean, the one, of course, most recent example is, of course, the Uber acquiring Kareem, also where Kareem had that exit. But I mean, personally, I don't agree with that exit. I just think Kareem made a mistake. But for Uber, it was a great thing because it got the market share and it was competing neck to neck with the Kareem at the time. So. Um, so besides being like creating a startup that is very enticing to investors so that they get acquired, do you feel there will be like a IPO in Pakistan Stock Exchange?
See, on the Kareem and Uber exit, so I was part of the firm that did the Series B, Series A for Kareem, right? Abraj.
Mhm.
I remember when they did the first $25 million check. So we saw that whole thing play out. And I just moved back to Dubai. So we had Abraj, and that investment was done. I think what is very key to note, and we also, as a firm, helped Kareem enter Egypt, Saudi, and other markets that they were not in. I think the
Mhm.
main thing to point out is that a company like Uber, whose roots are Western US, they never always, I mean, contact support was on text, no cash transactions. I think because Kareem won the talent game with regards to localization,
Yeah.
understanding markets like Pakistan, Egypt, Saudi. That is why eventually Uber decided, okay, fine, these guys are venture funded. We need to come and acquire them. And I mean, you might not agree with the exit, but I mean, I feel that it was great because Uber became such a big giant. And when you become a
Yeah.
huge giant, it is very hard to compete, right? Like today, with regards to food delivery. I mean, other than Food Panda today in Pakistan, there are very few players that can actually match or do that because Food Panda has such big pockets. The same way when Deliveroo entered Dubai, it was just Deliveroo, and today it's Uber Eats. No other player was able to compete because when you're spending like tens of millions of dollars a month, it is very, very hard to compete in these markets. Um,
Yeah.
with regards to an IPO, I think the biggest misconception and the biggest mistake today, I feel, is that the valuations that today tech companies are getting through the venture rounds, unfortunately, the Pakistani market does not value them at the same levels, right? So
Right.
A PSX based IPO would not end up being the best for a traditional sort of tech company here, because I feel that even if you take companies today, like I give you some Systems Limited is one of the largest IT listed companies in Pakistan. My uncle is the founder and chairman, so I closely have seen Systems as well in terms of how they've built up such a big business over the past few years. And today, if you look at the market cap or what the PSX in terms of how they give them the value, I don't think it's.
Mhm.
I mean, I think if they were listed today in the US and they had
Mhm.
their sister companies which are based in Sri Lanka and I mean Europe and whatnot, as part of that, it'd be a much higher value. And I mean, if you take, if, I mean, I'm not an expert on the PSX, but I mean, if
Mhm.
you take the top 10 or 20 companies in the PSX today, they are anywhere from even the top 30, they would be starting from maybe $100 million going up to a few $1 billion, where you have companies like UBL and whatnot that are there. Today, if you take majority Series A's or Series B's happening in the country, the valuation is anywhere from 50, $60 million up to
Mhm.
two, three, $400 million, right? And my assumption is that
Yeah.
each round these companies are doing, their dilution is between, I would say, 15 to 25, 30%. So just doing sort
Mhm.
of back of the envelope math over there, I mean, any Series A, Series B, or any Series B
Mhm.
or post Series A, I mean, if they're a high valued company, is
Yeah.
worth the same as the top
Same as
30 companies in Pakistan.
yes.
And
Yeah.
it is very phenomenal because, I mean, you say, okay, these companies are small companies or small teams. Other companies are giants like ICI, Nestle, Unilever, Angro, or cement companies. And why is there such a valuation arbitrage? But then you look at, I
Yeah.
mean, look at Facebook, Meta, look at all these other companies. They were tiny
Yeah.
companies earlier, and today,
Yeah.
I mean, when you compare a
Yeah.
Xerox to a Tesla
Yeah.
or to an Apple's, I
Yeah.
mean, it's the same, right?
Yeah, yeah, yeah. So, I mean, you have raised money from like, the like five, really well-known investors in Pakistan, Pakistan-focused investors, of course. So you have raised money from three of them. So was this like more strategic, like you really wanted them on your cap table, or was it just happened that way?
I think um, it. I did want them on the cap table. It was strategic as well, but it did end up happening, right? I mean, our lead investor, which is Atif Bhai, who's super great, right?
Yeah,
I mean,
yeah,
um, it was done literally in a week, right? And I think the main reason for the consensus to get all three together was that if you look at the portfolio of the three, it is your main sort of startup ecosystem today. And the idea was that for them, and I think most people today, collabs is very strategic, right? Strategic in the sense that we want to open these spaces across the country. We are supporting startups. So for
yeah.
them to back us is a way of sort of trying to say that, okay, we are backing the ecosystem and we are
Right.
acting as that ecosystem support. So I think that's where sort of the strategic value comes into place. And that's how we sort of built that consensus.
Well, thank you, Umar, for your time, and really like pleasure talking to you. And once again, congratulations on the round, and hopefully, like we'll hear more rounds soon, in a couple of years. And wish you all the best.
Thank you so much. Bye.
Thanks for listening to the Misaal podcast. I hope you enjoyed the podcast and will thank me by writing a review or sharing it on social media. Make sure you follow and subscribe so you don't miss the next episode. Thanks again. See you soon.